What's going on, guys? Tower number 9 here, and today I have another installment in my Force 5 series where I'm playing at least 5 games with each of the new leaders from Twilight of the Republic, and this time we have Anakin Skywalker. Let's get right into it. So, Anakin Skywalker, what it takes to win. He is a leader that deploys on 6 resources. He is an aggression heroism aspected leader. He deploys as a 4/7 with the Force Jedi and Republic traits. He has Overwhelm. When attacking an enemy unit, deal excess damage to the opponent's base. And as a passive ability, he gets +1 power for every 5 damage on your base. So this means that in practice, he's very often substantially stronger than 4/7, especially if the opponent has been aggressive early on. And it can really make him a powerhouse in some scenarios. On his leader side, he has an action where you can exhaust to deal 2 damage to your base to attack with a unit, and if it's attacking a unit, it gets +2 power for this attack. So that can be used to kind of punch up and have some of your units deal with things they wouldn't normally be able to deal with. And it does deal some damage to your base, but an old saying goes in a lot of card games, only the last point of life matters. So if you win with 1 HP left, or if you win with 30 HP left, a win is a win. And Anakin is one of the first leaders that lets you use your base HP as a resource, which is a concept that's been very relevant in other games. You know, you hear in Magic the Gathering or Flesh and Blood TCG people talking about using your life pool as a resource, and Anakin lets you kind of do that by exchanging some damage on your base for more powerful unit combat. So I think we've seen him be really powerful and limited. He was kind of the star of the early pre-releases, and I think he's pretty good in Constructed too. I've been testing with him, and this is what I came up with. This is a Cunning Anakin build. And the main concept here is I have some good combinations with, now there are 2 of them. I have some powerful units, and I have a lot of ways to attack the opponent's hand, which gives this deck some really interesting sort of play patterns. You now have enough early Cunning Force units to enable Force Throw. So Grogu, Ezra Bridger, and Ahsoka Tano here are all going to be quite relevant at enabling that Force Throw, hitting the opponent pretty hard. And we're going to we're going to talk about these guys individually. Grogu here is a good anti-aggro type thing. His ability to exhaust an enemy unit can be quite relevant. He is somewhat vulnerable to ambushes. That's a real downside for him. But he can also be a good way later on in the game to deal with units that come into play ready, like the Falcon or Cassian. He can kind of be a built-in answer for those sorts of things to prevent the opponent from getting that surprise damage. Ezra is just a pretty solid card. 3 cost, 3/4 isn't the greatest stat line at this time, but it's quite serviceable, and his ability is really relevant. When this unit completes an attack, look at the top card of your deck. You may play it, discard it, or leave it on top of your deck. This is like card advantage and or filtering, depending on specific situations. Sometimes you see a card that you can't play immediately but want to just leave there. That's fine. But sometimes you see a card that you can play immediately, in which case you didn't use a card from hand. Sometimes you see a card that you don't want, in which case you discard it and you're filtering. I think his ability is quite strong. It is worth noting it's not an on attack. It's when this unit completes an attack. So he does have to survive the attack for the ability to go off. And then on the right, we have the new Ahsoka Tano, always ready for trouble. She is a 3 cost, 3/4 with the Force Jedi and Republic traits. While you control fewer units than an opponent, including this unit, she gains ambush. And as an action, you can spend 2 to return this unit and each upgrade on her to their owner's hands. So she's going to be better against people using like a multiple small unit strategy and outnumbering you. It is worth noting that because including this unit matters, the opponent has to outnumber you by 2 or more for Ahsoka to be able to ambush. If they have 2 units and you have 1 unit and you play Ahsoka, well, now you both have 2 units and she loses ambush. As a result, I don't think she's incredible, but she is relevant, and she's also some nice insurance in case you run up against a token heavy deck or similar. All the 2-drops in this deck have the Force or the Republic traits. So R2-D2 here on the left is super good. 2 cost, 2/4 Cunning Heroism. When played, you may discard a card from your hand. If you do, search the top 3 cards of your deck for a card and draw it. So this is going to be really improving your consistency early on in the game. If you have a hand where you have R2 but you don't have a 3-drop, he gives you a much better chance to get that. And he's going to be a huge enabler for now there are 2 of them, which is also the reason that we are running the Hotshot V-Wing here on the right side. side. You might ask why you would run that instead of a Merc gunship or something else that could trade better with early units. Well, there's two reasons. First up, Anakin's ability allows this to trade favorably with early units in exchange for a little damage on your base, but more importantly, the hotshot viewing has the Republic trait, and that means it is going to work well here with the now there are two of them moves. So now there are two of them, 3-cost event, Cunning. If you control exactly one unit, play a non-vehicle unit from your hand that shares a trait with the unit you control, it costs 5 less. This is probably the best legendary in the new set, at least at first glance. It's really, really strong, and this deck is able to use those 2-drop synergies to play now there are two of them on turn 2, from any of the initial units you play. You can play now there are two of them and bring out Anakin Skywalker or Plo Koon. Grogu is Force, and both of these are Force, and the rest of the units are Republic, and these two are Republic. So these guys are your targets for now there are two of them. Anakin is a 6/6 with coordinate on attack, draw a card. Plo Koon is a 3/6 with ambush and coordinate, raid 3. Plo Koon is probably better than Anakin a lot of the time. If you hit now there are two of them, bring in Plo Koon, ambush and kill your opponent's turn 1 play. That is a very solid start to the game. So you might be asking, isn't Unit Anakin a bad card? Well, he's not the best card ever. So he's a 5-cost 6/6. That's above the curve stats-wise. You're normally looking at 11 points of stats there, but he has no immediate board impact. And we were even seeing decks cutting Poe Dameron, who is also a 5-cost 6/6 and has an even better ability than Anakin's, because that lack of immediate board impact was an issue. But if you can play Anakin as a 3-cost, well, 3-cost units don't typically have to have an immediate board impact, and a 6/6 stat line is massive at that point in the game. So now there are two of them, opens some really relevant possibilities for this card being good. And you might say, well, why don't you run Poe? Well, Poe has the resistance trait, and so he doesn't really support now there are two of them. You can't play 4, 2-cost resistance units. In fact, I don't think there's any 2-cost resistance units. So Anakin's a valid target and Poe isn't. If Poe were Republic, would you play him instead of Anakin? Sure. But Anakin's ability is also not bad. So it's a conditional ability, but it's quite strong when it's activated. So if you can get coordinate up and potentially attack with him to draw a card, you're generating some card advantage. And because he has that Force trait, he's enabling Force Throw, which is one of the strongest cards in the deck. He's also on theme for the deck if you care about theme. And like I said earlier, Plo Koon is often better, but Anakin is no joke. Anakin is, I don't think he is the strongest card ever in a vacuum, but in this deck he fits pretty well. So if you haven't already picked up a Twilight of the Republic 2-player starter, you can find him there, or I believe in the organized play packs. He is not in normal packs because he is a starter set card, but he's a starter set card that I think works pretty well here. So the other big component of the deck, other than the now there are two of them setups and so on, is discard effects. So you can use this to kind of lock out the game and remove your opponent's options. The first one is Force Throw. Force Throw, if you have a Force unit, it's one of the best cards in the game, in my opinion. Choose a player. That player discards a card from their hand. Then, if you control a Force unit, you may deal damage to a unit equal to the cost of the discarded card. You also have Spark of Rebellion. So that's, you just look at their hand and discard a card. And unlike Bazine Natal, they don't get to draw a card afterwards. Now, you don't get that unit afterwards, and you can't smuggle, but playing out the Spark of Rebellion is a great way to remove someone's key play. And then, of course, we also have Pillage, which just forces 2 discards. That's just a pretty straightforward, hit 'em hard type effect. And if someone has 2 cards in their hand at the start of the turn, you pillage them, they might not get a turn. Now, to be fair, you do have to watch out for people who have smuggle units and other plays that they can still make even if you've stripped all the cards out of their hand. But these discard effects are still very effective at preventing the opponent from doing all that much. Here are some potential things that I think might be interesting to test out. So Mace Windu. Right now, this deck has 2 copies of Han Solo Reluctant Hero as the top end. I think it would be interesting to test out Mace Windu. Mace Windu could potentially be played by now. There are 2 of them. You wouldn't, of course, be able to play it on turn 2, but you could do it later in the game. He has that Force trait, which enables some other effects, and his ambush and then ready might be a good way to synergize with this deck's strong ability to make a comeback and close out games fast after being attacked aggressively earlier. The unlicensed headhunter here is a card that doesn't see a ton of play, but I believe I was talking to Poem from the Late Night Gaming team, who was talking about this card being effective in Boba Red because of its ability to, first off, it's a 2-cost 3/2, second off, it has Saboteur, and that allows it to potentially deal with an opponent that's running something like the 7th Fleet Defender, and yes, it allows the opponent to heal under some circumstances, depending on how it gets defeated, but this deck isn't trying to do an aggro game plan at first. It's trying to gain control, get a strong board, remove options from the opponent's hand, and then close things out, so the heal probably isn't all that relevant early on in the game. If this card had the Republic trait, I would already be playing it. The main reason that I'm not playing it is that it doesn't enable. Now there are 2 of them, while the V-Wing does. And then Tech here on the right is a classic. Tech giving a bunch of cards Smuggle is a just really generically strong effect. I think he could be really solid, and I could see trying to change the deck a bit and squeeze in Tech. If not for going for the Force trait, I would probably already have replaced Ahsoka with Tech, but the Force enablement for Force Throw is pretty relevant in my view. So those are some other things to potentially try, and there's some other stuff too. So I think that that one card where the opponent has to choose between giving you 2 battle droids or discarding a random card from their hand, I believe it's called Political Pressure. I think that would be an interesting card for this deck to include, because if the opponent takes the discard, it's increasing your pressure on their cards in hand, and if they give you the battle droids, you can potentially use Anakin's ability to have the battle droids hit harder than they would otherwise and trade with other units, which to me seems like it could be pretty strong. Haven't tested it, but it seems interesting to me, and I'm sure there's a bunch of other cards that you guys can think of that might be cool for the deck as well. Other variations, I will say I've played significantly more than 5 games with this version of Anakin, and I have played a bit with some other stuff. I was testing an Anakin Blue at one time that I thought was pretty interesting. So Red Blue Hero is kind of a tried and true archetype. We've seen a fair amount of success with Young Han Blue or with Rey Red. Anakin Blue, I was noticing that Quill here, or Queel, or however you pronounce that, I'm sorry, I haven't seen that season in a while. I was noticing that his ability was quite good because I felt like the deck was more, so it was red-blue with the base being blue, and I felt like the deck ended up being more blue than red, so his card draw was pretty good there. And I thought that was a cool deck. I thought it was solid. Anakin's leader card is honestly a pretty powerful card. I know there's been some skepticism of 6 deployment leaders, but Anakin seems like he really has a strong ability on both sides. It's funny too. I didn't like him at first, but I think he's really good. When he was first previewed, I was very skeptical. It felt like he was kind of all over the place, but having played some more with it, I feel like it's really coming together, and he is very solid. The other thing that might be interesting, or at least that piqued my curiosity, was Anakin Green. This General's Blade seems like it would go pretty well with some of the Jedi stuff, and you could run ECL, you could run a bunch of other stuff, but the Cunning Anakin was the one that I first sort of hit on and that was first exciting to me, in large part thanks to those hand destruction tactics, which are a thing that have been kind of around in the game for a while. But I thought, hey, now we have enough cunning cunning force units to really enable force throw early on. If you were running this in the Spark of Rebellion meta, you wouldn't really have enough early forced units to make it that strong. Whereas now we have Grogu, now we have Ahsoka, in addition to Ezra, who was already there, and then Anakin himself. We have kind of the high end force units too. Anakin, Plo Koon, Leader Anakin. There are a lot of enablers for force throw in this deck, and force throw is such a good card. Plus, it gets to combine with some of the other discard effects that you can put together from aggression, and the Spark of Rebellion, of course, from Cunning Heroism. So I felt like this ended up being pretty synergistic and strong, to be honest with you. I'm not saying, it's 100% tuned. I've run it through the gauntlet and I'd take it to a tournament tomorrow. Or I would totally take it to a local tournament tomorrow if that were the case, but I don't think that I would run it to a big tournament at this phase necessarily. I'd want to do some more refinement, but I do actually think this Cunning Anakin build is very strong. I'm gonna have a link to it in the video description below, so that if you're interested in running something like this, you can check it out. But I'm also curious to hear your thoughts. Do you think I'm way off base on this? Do you think that I should have played more games with Anakin Blue or something and tested that more before focusing on Cunning? I did play some, but Cunning was my focus from comparatively early, and I think it ended up being pretty solid. I know also I saw some people from KTOD were playing a similar deck, at least. I haven't seen their exact deck list, but I know they were playing around with Cunning Anakin, and I do think it's a deck with a lot of potential. So, once again, I ended up actually playing significantly more than 5 games and testing this because I was having fun and trying to figure out different combinations and so on. But yeah, that's the Force 5 installment for Anakin. Let me know what you guys think, and be sure to like and subscribe if you like this sort of content. Also, if you don't like this, please do dislike this video. That's not a joke. The like to dislike ratio is actually helpful for determining what sort of content people are most interested in. I know it's not really the usual thing for YouTubers to tell people to dislike their videos instead of just saying like and subscribe or whatever, but that's it is helpful to me to get that feedback. And also let me know if you have any suggestions for what you want to see me cover next on the Force 5 series. I believe that my next installment is probably going to focus on Count Dooku, but I'm not sure what I'm going to do for the one after that, and I'm taking suggestions if there's something you want to see. That's going to do it for this one, guys. Thanks again for watching, and we'll be back later with some more Star Wars Unlimited content. I will catch you guys later.